Okay, now first let's try to code this part alone, right? We need to have a form component and which displays this form, and then we need to have a table which displays details of all the students, right? This information is there in the database. So let's do the back end and also the front end for displaying this part. Okay, so first what I will do is I will go create a directory here, right? Mkdir is a command to create a directory. I create a directory called bmern, like bala mern, MERN. Okay, so I'll go into the directory cd mern. Okay, so now here I have to create two directories, right? So in this there is client and there is server. Okay, so I will create two directories, client and then server. Okay, so and in the we need to have a React application. So let's go to the client directory. Okay, now let's create a React app. So for that nps create app, React app. We already created a directory client, so we just put a dot here. So a React application will get created. Let's go to the backend while the React application is getting created. So first thing is we use a npm init command. This is used to create the Node.js project. When you do a npm init -y, right? So this is going to create as the so before nothing is there in the server. This npm init -y will create the Node.js project, and then it will create the package. Okay, so after that we will install Express. So Express is the framework we use in the so Express is a Node.js web application framework, right? That's that has many features of building your web or mobile application for the backend. So in the backend, we need to start a web server. Uh, we need to handle requests from the web server. So all these things has to be done, right? So that's all we can use the Express framework and we can do it. So for that we need to install Express. npm is a node package manager which is used to manage the packages of node, right? Which is used to install different modules in node. Okay, and once this is done, let's see what happened to our thing. Okay, I think this is installed. So now if you see server, the package or JSON is there. So in this we will, when we keep on installing each modules, right, this file will be updated, the package.json file will be updated. Okay, so let's go and install Express now. Okay, so let's install. So and next we are going to install Mongoose. So Mongoose is object data modeling library. So what is object data modeling? Right, it is for MongoDB and Node.js, right? So it manages the relationship between data, provide schema validation, and used to translate between objects in the code and representation of objects in the Mongo database. So in the Mongo database, right, the information is stored, right? Suppose you store the student information in MongoDB, you store name of the student, the roll number, address, all the information you store, right? So that is stored as objects in MongoDB, right? And you extract that information from Mongo database and you store that information in objects in your code. So this Mongoose library is used to do this conversion from the Mongo database objects to the objects in your code, right? This conversion is done by this library Mongoose. Okay, and this Mongoose is also used to connect to your Mongo database, right? It's used to do the schema validation, right? What is the schema validation is like? when you have a table, right? The table we have different columns, and each columns will have some certain rules, right? One column will be a primary key, other column will not be a primary key. Okay, so there are some certain. So this is what is the schema, right? Your table has this many columns, and each column has this data, right? This is a schema. So when you read from the database, or when you put data into the database, right, this validation has to be done, right? You cannot put data just like that, right? So you can suppose you in a database you store the mobile number. It should be 10 digits, right? So while entering data into the database, there should be a validation to verify the mobile is 10 digit or not. This kind of validation can be done using Mongoose library. Okay, so it is used to connect to your Mongo database and do all this validation, converts objects in your code to the objects in the MongoDB. All this is done in Mongoose. Okay, let's. So Express is now installed. Okay, so you see here, right? There is one folder called Node modules. Okay. So in this, all the modules related to Express is installed here. Okay, and then if I go to see here in the dependency, the Express is installed. Okay. Now let me install the Mongoose. Okay. So after I install Mongoose, right, the dependencies will also be updated here. Okay. And then NodeMon. See, what happens is, what is the advantage of NodeMon is, right? Suppose you are making changes to your backend code. Whenever you make the changes to a backend code, right? What the backend does is basically a server, right? It accepts the HTTP request, it does some manipulation, and then sends a response. That's what the backend server is mainly doing, right? So whenever you make a change to a backend code, you have to restart the server. You have to stop the server and start it again, right? See, this NodeMon tool, right? It makes your job simple. When you start a server with NodeMon, whenever you make a change to a backend code and you put controllers, the server will be restarted automatically. Okay, so for that we have to install NodeMon. Okay, so now see, Mongoose is installed. Okay, this version is installed. Now let's install NodeMon. Okay, and then we are going to install CORS, right? CORS is cross origin resource sharing, right? So CORS origin resource sharing is a HTTP header based mechanism implemented by the browser, which allows a server or an API to indicate any origins other than its origin, from which the unknown origin gets permission to access and load resources. So here, so the backend server is running on port number 5000, and the React server is running on port 3000, right? So localhost 3000 is React server, localhost 5000 is backend server. So now the data has to be exchanged between these two origin, right? So CORS origin, the resource should be shared. Like resource is the data in the backend, right? The name of the student, the details about the student. So this information should be shared between two origins. One is localhost 3000 and one is localhost 5000. Okay, so for that we have to install CORS. Okay, so I think NodeMon is installed. Let's install CORS. So what is Ajax, right? Asynchronous JavaScript and XML, right? This is it's a technology, right? It's a technique where in the client side, right? In the client side, what you have to do, you have to keep on getting data from the database, right? So you will do some front-end processing, and you also have to get some data from the database. So when you get the data from the database, your front-end processing has to stop. Okay, asynchronous is what? Meaning of asynchronous? Parallel processing, right? So when you are doing any processing, Parallelly, you can get the data from the database. Okay, but to do this parallel processing, Ajax technique is required. So Ajax main purpose is getting retrieve data from the database in the background, which has to happen without interfering with anything in the display, in the UI, right? Nothing will happen, but in the background, you will be getting the data from the database. The technique is Ajax. Okay. Next, we have to install .env because we will use the environment variables. So, like now you have to connect to the Mongo database, right? For that, you need to have a URL. The URL only you have to connect to the Mongo database. This URL and all you can store in a variable. Okay. For that, we will install this .env module. Okay, see here everything is updated here. Course is updated now. .env will be updated. So install all these modules and then only we can start coding the backend.